One of the biggest topics and questions that detailers have is how much to price something, when to raise your prices, how do you go about choosing a profitable number. So by far the most asked question you will see in the comment section, you see in any videos. So today I'll give you a pretty thorough understanding of how to actually go about pricing, just because most detailers that I've spoken to, whether it's in the DMs, whether it's on a phone call, whether it's a client, whether it's a member inside the academy, whatever place it might be, 90% of the time, the way they're pricing and how they're going about it is pretty far off. So hopefully with today, I'll give you a few more resources and a different perspective for you to look at how to price your services. Also, something cool Jobber is doing, which I highly recommend you do, is to click the link down below and apply for Jobber grants. Now they've done this 2-3 times already, and I think 2 years ago, a detailer was one of the recipients. But they're giving $150,000 to 15 different businesses. So if you want to use, so each business is going to get $10,000 in grants. So this is important because it's not a loan, it's not a credit line, you don't pay anything back, nothing. You get $10,000 to use in your business however you see fit. You want to go get trained, spend money on ads, pay off your van, buy more equipment, whatever the case may be, however you want to use it in your business, you can do that. So to apply, the deadline is June 11th. So just click the link down below and apply. And I'm telling you, take advantage. Like, how can you not use $10,000 in your business in whatever way that you want? So click the link down below and apply. All right, so I'm gonna have my iPad right here, and hopefully you can see both things. We're gonna use just a simple notepad, and then we're gonna use a calculator on the left, okay? So the way you wanna price your jobs is going to be based off of budgeted hours and your hourly rate. That's it, all right? Simply going off of like, hey, I'm charging 150 and I wanna go to 175, is that a good price? It has no bearing because you're not attaching the other metrics to the number to make it make sense. I'm trying to stand over here, that way I can put the screen share here. So if you're just going based off of the number alone, saying, hey, we charge 50, maybe it should go to 70. Doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean anything if you're charging 600 and you're gonna go to $800. It still has no bearing to know whether or not you're charging the proper amount in your business. So for instance, right, we wanna, so the main way you wanna price your services is gonna be based off of what's called budgeted hours. Now this could be named whatever you want, like for lawyers it's gonna be called billable hours, right? So there's multiple ways to say this, but this is gonna be based off of your hourly rate goal. Now I've spoken to many detailers, and every time I ask them, their hourly rate goal is nowhere near what they're actually making per hour. So for this example, just again, I'll keep things very generic, try to adjust these numbers to your market. Let's say your hourly rate goal is $50 an hour. That means when you're working on a job, which is the only time we make money is when we're actually detailing vehicles, when we're producing revenue. Let's say your hourly rate goal is $50 an hour, okay? Keeping things super simple. So let's say there's a job that you quote, it's gonna be $100, okay? Based off these two numbers, if you wanna hit an hourly rate goal of $50 an hour, you are going to have 2 budgeted hours to complete that job. Whether you take 5 minutes or 2 hours over those 2 budgeted hours, you're now over budget. So now let's go to the calculator, right? Simple math here. If you want to make $50 an hour and you're charging 100, you're gonna have 2 budgeted hours, right? Now let's say on that same $100 job, it took you 4 hours. Then your actual hourly rate goal is actually $25 an hour. And this is the biggest, most common issue I see with literally 90% of detailers who are pricing their jobs. They think it should be based off of, well, it's $250 and I wanna go to $280. Is that a good price? I don't know. It depends how long are you taking on these jobs and what's the hourly rate goal you wanna hit. Because then the next issue that happens is when there's 2 people on the job, okay? If there's 2 people on the job, do not think about it in terms of per hour as a whole. The most common thing I hear when there's 2 people working, they'll tell me our goal is to hit $100 an hour. which is absolutely false, because 10 out of 10 times I've spoken with detailers, they are nowhere near a true $100 per man per hour. Because if you wanted to legitimately hit $100 per man per hour, that means if it's gonna take you 4 hours in total man hours to complete the job, you should charge $400. Because if you're on the job site from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., both of y'all technically worked 10 to 12, which is 2 hours, but there's 2 of you. So times that times 4, and that's 4 total man hours that were spent on that job. And if you wanna make $100 per man per hour, then each working hour needs to be charged at $100. And that doesn't mean 2, that means 4. So every time I speak to a detailer and they're like, oh, well, we want to hit $100 an hour. And as I would, do you work with someone, whatever. So yeah, we work together and we try to hit $100 an hour. You are totally, completely off the mark. If you are charging, let's say $200 for 2 hours of work, that is not an effective rate of $100 an hour. That's $50 per man per hour that you're collecting, right? That is by far the most common mistake I've seen when I talk to detailers. Like, that is like, it's a shock to them, like, oh, really? Because then the next part is, how accurate are you with your tracking? Because if you're not tracking how long it's taking you on every job, you're still just throwing the wind to the fire or whatever. Like, for instance, for us inside of Jobber, we clock in at the start of the day and we clock in on every job. That way we can measure what's called, at least what I call it, and it's how they call it too in Jobber, our productivity rate, right? And what we wanna see is, of an 8-hour day, how many of those hours are we actually spent working on a vehicle? Because again, we only produce revenue. We only make money when we're working on a vehicle. That's the only time we make money, when we're driving to the location, whether we're at the shop prepping, whether anything else other than working on the customer's vehicle, we are not making money. So for instance, if out of an 8-hour shift, 50% of your day goes to driving, that means you only have 4 hours to make money. So this is why the next thing I ask detailers is, like, do you track your time on all your details? 9 out of 10 times, I get a absolutely not. So what I recommend you do is, you think more like an employee than a business owner, right? The more structured you can have your business to where you're an employee in the business and you have systems set up to follow, that's gonna make your life so much better, because now you're actually looking at it as a business. Like, too many of us think that we're business owners because we're the business owner, but you just have a glorified job. If you think of yourself truly as an employee, you'll be able to streamline your business a lot better. Like, don't look at yourself as the business owner when you're doing these day-to-day things. Think about, there's someone else running your business and you are a hired employee for this business. Then you would think about things a lot differently. You wouldn't say, oh, well, it's just me, so I could take a little longer. Well, no, if you are paying an employee to do this job that you're doing right now, you wouldn't want them to do that. You would already have to start to set processes and systems and checklists and criteria to make sure that doesn't happen. So don't think of yourself as a business owner when you're doing the work. You have to look at yourself as an employee. So anyways, okay, so hopefully you guys can see this well, because I didn't test this before I started recording. So for instance, let's say you have, and here's an exercise you can do, right? Because again, the overarching problem is that there's no tracking going on, right? So for instance, inside of Jobber, we clock in on all our jobs. We know that this job took us total man hours, right? 4 hours or 7.5 hours or 12 hours or 19 hours or 20 hours or 7 hours or 3. Like, we have that data on every job because we clock in and out on every job. So me, Lex, Angel, Angel might start on the vehicle, then he goes to go pick something up at a film shop, and then I work on the car a little bit, and then I go do something else, and then Lex finishes up because he was on another vehicle. We're tracking how much time we're putting in on every vehicle. That way we can actually run a report later that day, or maybe let's say it's a $7,000 job and we want to see where we are with our labor revenue, we're gonna, hey, so far we have 13 clocked in hours on this job. We have 24 hours to complete this job to hit our hourly rate goal. What do we need to do? What's left? Whatever. That way we actually track how we're moving on these jobs. Whereas again, if you're just working, not tracking anything, well, you don't know what your effective hourly rate is. You don't know how long you're taking on these jobs. You don't, just because you have a $1,000 or $500 or $4,000 job, it doesn't mean you're profitable. It doesn't mean you're making money. That's why just saying the number alone of, oh, well, this is a $2,000 job, so, oh, we're gonna make good money. No, you're not. Not if you're not tracking all these numbers, because just saying in itself, $2,000 means nothing, right? Because let's say it takes you, I don't know, I'm making up numbers here. 25 hours, you put 25 budgeted hours in, right? And again, simple math, I have the calculadora here on my side. What is this? That's gonna be $2,000. And I'm doing the math so you can see how it's done. Just divide $2,000 divided by 25, and that puts you at $80 an hour, which again, I'm not saying it's bad or good, I'm just giving an example, right? Like for us, our minimum hourly rate that we wanna hit here per man per person is $85 an hour. It goes all the way up to $125. Now, you say, okay, so that's good, right? But again, you don't know this if you're not tracking these numbers. You have no clue what your actual hourly rate is if you're not tracking every job. So then let's say on that same $2,000 job, because you're, oh, well, maybe I should do the rotary a little bit here, and maybe clean the inner barrels here, and what if I do this? And again, you get into that mindset, let me do this and let me do that, and the customer asked me to do this, and let's say now, again, just making up an example here. Let's say it took you why am I doing that? 2,000 divided by, let's say it took you 35 hours. As an example, guys, chill. Now your hourly rate is actually $57 an hour, right? Again, made up examples. Now the issue with that is, again, this is why it's important to look at yourself as an employee, not a business owner, okay? Whenever, like, as far as labor to revenue ratio, you wanna pay the employee, meaning yourself, for most of us, yourself, 25% or less than what you charge to the customer. And this is very important because the issue is when you're like, let's say for instance, you're gonna pay someone, if you hire someone, let's say you're gonna pay them $15 an hour, right? And if we wanna keep the labor revenue 25%, the labor cost 25% or less of the total revenue, all you have to do is just, let's say $15 times 0.25, or I'm sorry, times 4. And at a minimum, to cover this employee's cost, you'd have to charge the customer $60 an hour. The reason why you want to have that margin is because it's all about profit and margin. If you're paying someone $15 an hour and you're charging the customer $30 an hour, the employee themselves, and assuming just one and not paying yourself, one employee is eating up 50% of the cost of the job, not including the gas, the material, all your other expenses. So at the end of it, you might be running at a 5% profit margin, and it's very, very, very difficult to grow your business or to invest in marketing or invest in training or tools or whatever, because you have such low margin. So the reason why we want to keep it under 25% is because we want to create as much margin as we can. So for instance, you as the business owner that needs to be thought about as an employee, let's say I want to make $20 an hour, right? And again, we can get into other conversations of, oh, well, $20 isn't enough. Well, yeah, if you have profit in your business, as you should also be taking distributions every quarter, and that's another way to pay yourself. It's not all just based on the hourly rate. Anyway, so now let's say you want to pay yourself $20 an hour, right? Again, I have to calculate over here, 20 times 4. So at a minimum, you need to be charging the customer $80 an hour to make sense of it. I kid you not, 10 out of 10 times when I've spoken to detailers across the nation and different sizes, each time they get this wrong. That's why it's so easy to see if someone is profitable or not. Because like, let's say they're spending, let's say they're spending let's say $1,500 on ads. 500 goes to the management fee, and then 1,000 in ad spend, right? And then there's 2 people working on these jobs, and they tell me, yeah, well, we charge around $250 for our typical detail. It takes around 4 hours to complete with 2 people. Without hearing anything else, I know that they're bleeding money pretty heavily without knowing. Because oftentimes, let's say with 2 people, it takes us 4 hours and we charge $290. I know off the bat, they're not thinking in per man per hour. So realistically, that's 8 hours you're spending on a $290 job, which again, if we do 290 divided by 8, that's $36 an hour that they're making between those 2 people. Now again, most of the time, I think I said 290, right? 290 divided by 4 is 72, which is like, okay, that's not bad. But the issue is they get that part wrong. It's 2 people, so you multiply that by 2, so it's 8. So you're making, what I say, $37 an hour. That is the reality that I see with literally 10 out of 10 detailers that I speak to, right? So then again, so how do we know what our pricing should be? So it's always a scale that's going to be moving, right? Always. It's never set in stone in terms of, once I set this number, it's done for. Because again, our pricing is based on the size of the vehicle, the condition, right? What we can actually do with it. So it's always gonna be changing, right? Don't think like, oh, I choose this one number and it's done forever, right? So first, start off with your hourly rate goal, right? What should that be? And this is the hourly rate goal that you're gonna charge to the customer. So we're not gonna tell the customer, hey, I'm charging you X amount per hour. How we figure that out is based on the total price, based on our projected budgeted hours, we equal that amount, right? So again, if you wanna make $50 an hour and it's gonna take you 2 hours to complete that job, you would charge $100 for that job, right? So that's pretty simple. Now again, your hourly rate goal is going to be based on your experience, your skills, your marketing, your sales process, the market that you're in, right? So to some people, $50 might be super high. To other people, $50 would get you out of business, right? So this is going to be very dependent in your area. For us, in everything that we do, our minimum that we aim for is $85 an hour, and that can go up to $125 when we're doing like PPF or vinyl wrap, right? So that's our range. So like for instance, and this is why I get so caught up of like when people say, oh, like I don't want to take on the small work, I just want to focus on like the high end work. That doesn't matter, right? If you're not pricing these jobs accordingly, I don't care if you're charging $7,000 or $10,000 for a PPF job. If you are not tracking the numbers and you're not separating what's material cost versus labor revenue, and you're not basing your budgeted hours strictly off of the labor revenue, you can still go out of business even if you are charging these higher prices. And vice versa, even if it's a $150 express maintenance detail that you do, but you have all your numbers aligned, you can still grow to whatever goals you want to do because all your numbers make sense. So I don't care if you're going for high-end PPF, vinyl wrap, window tint. I don't care if you're doing express washes. None of that matters. What matters is, are you hitting your numbers? Because if you're hitting your numbers and you are being profitable and there's margin in everything, you can grow. Plain and simple, nothing more than that. Like for instance, some of the most profitable jobs that we've done have been the most basic services, right? Like when we do our maintenance cleanings, we hit $90 an hour for the maintenance work, right? Our engine cleanings right now are $125, and they take us 30 minutes from getting it in, it takes us 30 minutes, and we charge $125. So that's why like you can grow a 6-figure business just doing engine cleanings if all your numbers make sense, right? You can make 6 figures doing washes if all your numbers make sense. So this whole premise of like, well, I only want to take on high-end work and you know what, I'm not going to touch those interiors. Now you might have a preference to how you want to build your business. That's totally fair, right? If you want to focus on correction, coating, window tint, PPF, totally fine. If you want to do more interiors, express detailing, totally fine. That part I don't care about. What I do care about is making sure that your numbers are correct so that in whichever way you want to go, it makes sense financially. It makes sense by the numbers. And I kid you not, 10 out of 10 detailers are not making sense with their numbers. So how do you choose an hourly rate goal? Again, this is something that's going to change over time. You might say, oh, well, I want to make $100 an hour. As you get leads in and you're like, 600, 900, 200, 400, and no one is biting, it's like, okay, maybe my hourly rate goes a little too high. Let me lower that a bit, right? So maybe you go to $75, and that's when things start to book in for you, right? So your hourly rate goal is something you'll find over time as you book in jobs, as you're able to deliver and see, hey, you know, I projected 2 hours, took us 4 hours. That I was nowhere near, you know, $50 an hour. That actually, you know, after, you know, I thought I was gonna take 2 hours, it took us 4, I actually made $25 an hour, right? So over time, it's gonna help you quote these jobs better, right? Because not only are you trying to hit an hourly rate goal, you also need to make sure you are projecting the proper budgeted hours for that work. Because you can say, okay, well, we're gonna charge, let's say I wanna make $100 an hour, and that's gonna take 2.5 hours to complete. So we're gonna charge $250, right? When you get on the job site, you're like, oh man, that job actually took us 6 hours, right? So it's also on you to say, like, you also have to be very, very specific with how you're projecting these budget hours. Because if you think, oh, well, yeah, let's knock it out super fast. If the condition itself doesn't lend to it, like, it's just like, you're not able to book it, you're not able to complete it in 2.5 hours. Like, you have to sell that service higher. You have to add more budgeted hours to that job. So what I say here? So yeah, so let's divide 250 actually. 250 divided by 6. And in this example, you actually made call it $42 an hour on that one, because you thought it was gonna take you you're trying to make $100 an hour, and you thought it was gonna take you 2.5 hours to complete. But on that same 250, it took you 6 hours. So effectively, instead of making $100 an hour, you made $42 an hour, right? Very big difference. But I'm telling you, like, this is exactly what I see when I talk to all the detailers on the phone, on the DMs, and this is exactly what I'm running into, and it's pretty bad. Because then here's the next thing that highly, highly dictates what you're pricing. And that's going to be your close ratio, right? This is how many people, based on the leads, are you booking into your schedule? Basically, how many, like, in our business, we send a quote out, not to everyone. I'd say about 90% of the leads that come into our business, right? Like through Jobber, we send a quote out to them, right? So if we get 10 leads into our business, we know that we're closing based on our close ratio on the amount of quotes that we sent divided by the amount of quotes that are accepted or won, or however you want to call it. Like this month, I think we're like at around a 43% close ratio, right? This month. So that means if we get 10 leads in, around 4 of those are gonna book with us, right? Now, and this is super important, because if you're like, you can't only send a quote out to the people that are for sure going to be a yes, because your close ratio will always show a higher amount. Like if you get 10 leads, right? And you only send quotes to 2 of those leads, and those 2 leads book, oh, there's a fly right there, it would tell you have a 100% close ratio. But that would be false, because you didn't send a quote out to the other 8, right? So let's say of 10 that you send out 10 quotes, 2 of them get accepted, those same 2. So in the first example, if you only send out the quotes to the 2 that told you yes, you would have a 100% close ratio. And you say, oh my God, look at us, we're so good. We have such a high close ratio. Now, if you did it the right way and you sent out that quote to all 10 leads and only 2 of them booked, you would have a 20% close ratio, right? Or conversion, or whatever you want to call it, right? You have a 20% close ratio. So that means if you get 10 customers or 10 leads, okay, we're gonna book 2 of those in. So another point to this is, for instance, if you are sending out a quote, like for us, we send out quotes to like 90% of our leads, not 100, like let's say 90%. So if you send out a quote, if you're sending out quotes to every lead, which you should, right? Which you should, again, we do this inside our business with Jobber. If you send 10 quotes, right? You send out 10 quotes, and 8 of them get accepted, like they book on the schedule, you would have an 80% close ratio, right? Now you might say, oh, that's really good. Which again, depending on where you are in your business, it probably can be, right? But that's also another big indication that you need to raise your prices, because literally 8 out of 10 people are telling you you're affordable. So for us, like, there is no right or wrong close ratio. Oh, there is a wrong close ratio. If you're like at 10% and you're not making money, you're doing a terrible job, right? There is no right or wrong close ratio. It's based on where you are in your business. So like when you're just getting started and your prices are low and like you want to get more work in, yeah, you're gonna charge a lower hourly rate. So your close ratio should probably be like 50, 60, 70% because your price pretty low. Now, if you're more established, you have a healthy amount of leads coming in, you have your sales processes dialed in, you don't need every job to book with you. You're more on the premium side of your pricing. Maybe around your area, you're at $95 an hour, right? Well, from there, you're maybe okay with a 20, 30, 40% close ratio because you don't need other jobs. You are on the premium side. Like, you're okay with 60% of people telling you no because that 40% is still booking out your schedule and you're still doing very well. So there is no right or wrong answer. But like, for instance, if you come to me and you say, oh man, we're closing at 70, 80%. It's like, yeah, well, you could probably raise your prices by 50%, by 15%, probably drop your close ratio by like 10%, and you'd still be making a lot more money just because you're now charging more. So that's another thing I would look at is your close ratio. And again, you would want to send a quote out, let's say to 90% of the leads, right? Like for us, whether they text us, whether they email us, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a walk-in, we're gonna send them a quote, unless they're just flat out just not qualified, right? Aside from that, we're gonna send out a quote to everyone. So this is a big indication when it comes to pricing, right? As far as, well, my schedule's booked out, or, well, that looks like a good price. That has zero indication on anything. That doesn't give you any information, any actionable information. Now, if you come to me and say, hey man, I'm closing at around 8%, it's okay. There's something disgustingly bad right now in your business that you need to fix. And it doesn't mean it's pricing. At that point, it could be your sales process, right? Because your pricing and your sales process are two different things, right? If you're closing at a 10% close ratio, that doesn't mean your prices are too high. Maybe you have a terrible sales system. Maybe you don't call back immediately. Maybe you take a full day to respond. Maybe you're not answering on the first call. Maybe you have a terrible attitude when you pick up the phone call. Maybe you're not following up 2, 3, 7, 9 days out the week. Like, it could be so many other things aside from price why your close ratio is so low. So this is another big thing you want to do. Now, inside of Jobber, it makes it super easy to track your close ratio because it does it for you. If it doesn't, all you have to do is look at the amount of quotes that you sent within whatever time period, divide that by the amount of quotes that were accepted, and that is your close ratio. So if you sent out 100 and 40 got accepted, that's a 40% close ratio. If you send out 100 and 80 of them say yes, that's an 80% close ratio. So that's another big determining factor of what your pricing should be, right? Again, if you want to keep on raising your prices and you were at a 50 and then a 40, then a 30, then a 20, and then a 15%, you're like, ooh, maybe we found our threshold. Let's kind of loosen up the pricing a little bit. And let's get back to like that 25% marker. You're able to make those adjustments knowing, oh, wrong one. No, oh, come on, man. Oh, come on. Knowing your close ratio. Without having this number, again, you're just throwing wind, what's it called? Throwing fire to the wind or wind to the fire? Who's throwing something? I don't know. But you're just guessing the entire time because you have no numbers to back any of this up. And I know you're probably expecting something like, oh, so for a wash, you need to charge this. And for a headlight restoration, it should be this price. No, that's why I want you to understand how to price these things because it's going to be different. Another detailer 10 minutes down the street probably can't charge $125 for an engine detail. They're probably charging $125 for a full inside and out detail, right? So even within their same market, just down the street, we're not gonna be the same. This is why it's so important for you to understand these numbers because if you're gonna introduce a new service or if you're in a different market or you're not trying to be a super premium or you wanna be more express, you can adjust these formulas and this format to better fit your business. There is no one size fits all. Like again, even with our window tint prices, right? We're on the premium side, we're on the low premium side, right? Like we'll do a ceramic all around for $600, $700. Another shop in our area will do it for $1,000, right? So we're expensive because there's tint shops that can do it for $200, right? We're expensive, we're by no means anywhere closest to the most expensive shop. And again, by knowing your numbers, like I don't care to be the most expensive because that like saying we're the most expensive shop doesn't align with my goal. If we're hitting our numbers, if we're hitting our productivity rate, if we're hitting our efficiency scores, I don't care to be the most expensive. I don't need to be the most expensive. And if we're hitting our numbers, we're profitable, we have margin, and we know what we're doing, I don't need to be the most expensive to wear it as a badge of honor. So what I would say is go look at your last 10 details, okay? So, and I really want you to do this exercise. Matter of fact, leave a comment down below with this exercise. Maybe not 10, you do 10, do 10. And no, don't do that, that'd be a lot. If you want, leave the last 10 jobs in the comments. So this is what I want you to do, right? Just to get a baseline of what your hourly rate actually is, right? and I'm gonna do 3, you do 10 though. Like go back in your schedule, look at what you charge and do this exercise. So what I want you to do is go back and say 1,350 and then 400. So go back and look at the jobs that you did, right? And then simply look and divide by how long it took you. Now again, if you're not tracking, you're like if you're not clocking in and out on every job, you're not gonna know this number. So just do your best to accurately guesstimate how long it took you. Now again, if it's by yourself, then yeah, it's 4 hours. If it's with 2 people, this is super important. If it's with 2 people and you work from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., but there's 2 people working, that's 8 man hours, not 4. That's super important to understand because this will absolutely skew your numbers thinking you're doing so well and you're actually doing very bad. So just remember, it's like if you're working with more than 1 person, it's total man hours that you need to account for. Not just for, we work from 8 to 10, so that's 2 hours. No, if there's 3 of y'all and you work from 8 to 10, that's gonna be 6 total man hours, not 2, right? So let's say the first one, just making up numbers here, took 6, took 15, and took 2, right? So then just do the math right there. So, and I'm just making up these numbers, so I couldn't tell you what the numbers are gonna be right now. So 270 divided by 6, that gave us $45 an hour. 1,350 divided by 15, that gave us $90 an hour, right? And then 400 divided by 2 equals $200 an hour, right? That would be really good actually. So go through this exercise, like seriously, go through this exercise and look at all your numbers and see where you come up. Now again, in your head, like what's the hourly rate goal that you want to do? And now just compare it against that. You might be saying, oh, well, we want to make around, I don't know, $65 an hour, right? Well, in this scenario, in the first one, you would be short $20 an hour on your hourly rate goal. And again, these are just made up examples, but go through them and see what you're actually making, because this is a good baseline to start. And again, if like let's say you want to pay yourself $20 an hour, you need to have that 25% or less of what you're charging to the customer. So then let's say like, oh, well, I want to make $25 an hour, right? Again, that's fine. It depends on your market, your area, what you're doing, right? If you want to make $25 an hour, again, just whatever hourly rate goal times 4. Okay, then charge $100 an hour to the customer, right? So let's say there's a job that's gonna take you, you're gonna charge $1,000 an hour, and since you wanna make $100 an hour, it's gonna take you 10 budgeted hours, right, to complete that job, right? Now, based off of this number, can you charge that much? Does it make sense, right? Because, oh, well, I wanna make $150 an hour. Okay, well, can you sell that, right? Like all these things come together, right? You have to get the marketing to get the lead. You have to have the sales process to actually follow the system. And you have to know your numbers to make sure the back end all makes sense. You can't have one without the other. So don't just look at something and just be like, oh, 240, right? It's gonna take you 6 hours and you're making, what is that? $45 an hour, and you're thinking you're making $100 an hour, right? So this is something that I go very, very in-depth inside of Detailers Growth Academy. I'm gonna stop right there because I think we're already like at 30 minutes. But this is like, trust me, I've spoken with detailers 45 minutes on the phone, breaking down their numbers to see what they're actually doing. And this is why I'm like, oh snap, most of you guys are really wrong because they're just so far off. Like dozens of times, oh, we try to make $100 an hour. Oh, and how many people do you work with? 2? You're nowhere near that number. And I don't say this like in a mean way or in a rude way. This is like objectively, to understand what your margin is, to be more profitable, to have a better sense of your numbers, this is the formula you have to follow. Anything less than this, you're just throwing fire to the wind. Like it's not gonna make any sense because you're not attaching all the other metrics to the number to make sure you're doing it in a proper way. I know that might have been quite a bit of information in this video, and I'll trust me, I'll be creating more content, more podcasts, more everything on knowing your numbers, just because it's so important and just because a lot of detailers are doing it the wrong way. And again, I'm not coming off of a rude, I know more. It's just objectively, this is just how the way you're supposed to price. This is actually understanding the numbers and actually having a formula on when you should or shouldn't, or when to adjust your pricing. So again, if you want to apply for Jobber grants, highly recommend you do this. It takes a few minutes to do, but you applying will get you into the next round if you get passed, and you can potentially win $10,000. You can earn or you can receive $10,000 in grants to go grow your business. So take a few minutes, apply. But other than that, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you on the next video.